This past weekend, I had the opportunity to compete in my very first aquascaping competition at the Keystone Clash 2022. It was a blast, and I had an opportunity to learn a lot. So I'm going to show you guys my aquascape, let you see it, check out the process a little bit of how I made it, but then we're going to do something that I think is going to be really awesome that you guys will really enjoy. We're going to get to talk to one of the very top aquascapers in all of the United States, and she's going to dissect my aquascape, tell you all the things that I messed up on, and hopefully it's something you can learn from. With Jen Williams. If you don't know who Jen is, she is, I know she's not gonna like this, definitely one of the top aquascapers in the United States. A professional aquascaper. So if you can be a professional aquascaper, there's not many of those people in the world. So right, so low bar. So anyways, what I've asked Jen to do is kind of take a look at my aquascape and kind of go through, because I want for you guys to be able to see, here's an aquascape, here's what a judge would actually look at. Now Jen didn't judge these things.
I didn't judge.
She didn't judge.
I just ran the
So
thing.
this is, she helped out and helped us get materials, that kind of thing, but allowed us to be our own creators. But I kind of want her opinion. Go through detail. How would you judge this? What are the things you're looking at? You know, kind of the steps that you would go through on that process.
Okay.
All right.
You ready?
Yep, go
Okay.
for it.
So, first I want to say that I really, really, really like this layout. It was in my top 3 if I was going to judge.
Okay.
What I really like about it is that you use the materials appropriately. So you use the direction of all the wood. You focused in on that and you took that and you used it for everything else.
Right.
So you had an idea and you stuck with it and you just nailed it. You made everything else work with it. And I don't know which piece you started with. Did you start with the rock or the wood?
So I actually put the wood in first, and then kind of put the rocks in there with that.
Yeah, to hold it down.
Yes, a big part was to hold it
So
down.
everything was dry. So everything was going to float. So that was a big part of this handicap because everybody had the same materials to work with. So yeah, and I mean I would have done the same thing. You can only do what you can do, right? So do you remember which piece you started with? I would guess.
It might have. I think it might have been the big piece in the back. I think is probably what I started with. I'm pretty sure that was kind of the piece I started with.
And then you just started with that guy, and then everybody else fell into place.
Yep. Yep.
That's the way to do it. I think a lot of times we get lost in the process, and instead of letting the materials speak to us, we try to yell at them and put them in a place.
Yeah.
And it's not appropriate. So if you can find that one piece that speaks to you, and you can use just the right way that it needs to be used, everything else falls into place.
Right.
Everything else. And it's just so much easier to work that way when you're not forcing things that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And you'll wind up with a better looking final piece, right? Because everything's cohesive. So for this particular layout, we're back on track. I did like the contrast of the stone. There weren't a lot of choices, so it is what it is. But it was still the earth tones versus going with the gray stone. Sometimes manzanita can have a little bit of gray in it. You can get away with it, but it always mellows out to the wood tone.
Yeah.
The sword is probably not appropriate for there because it's going to get big. It's just going to plow through everything like Godzilla.
Yep.
But
I understand that because that was one of the pieces I was like, I don't know.
Right. But for now, it's filling a spot quite nicely. I do like how you prepped the creeps out and you let them walk like they would.
Yeah.
Well done. I did like that. I appreciated that. That was a detail where you knew what you were dealing with. You knew the process of the plant and what it was going to do.
I love the fact you give me that feedback because one of the other judges I asked, what did they think? And that was actually one of the pieces they didn't like. But I think this is kind of a good piece to talk about. Judges look at different things and see it from a different viewpoint. So I appreciate that feedback and also recognize Jen likes it, somebody else might not. And that's okay.
And I'm always going to take a nature base. I'm always going to say, how would this be in nature? And that's what that would do. That's exactly what that crypt would be doing. It would be creeping on its way to find its new spot.
Right.
So that was well done also. I mean, I don't know. I really like this. I did. I thought it was well done. It was, like I said, my top 3.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple questions then. So with the pieces in the rocks, first off, trying to figure out what would fit in there was tough. This rock is really hard to work with. It is very dense, hard to break apart. But one of the things I know a lot of times is you try to get the directions kind of going the same way with the rocks. And I don't have that.
No, you don't. Okay, you want to get like super specific?
Well, let's talk about it. Yeah. So
another distraction is you've got this white on the rock, but you have it in other places. And that would have been amazing if you could have figured out how to use that directionally to even further strengthen the flow through the tank. That would have been, cherry on top.
Yeah.
Again, you had 6 pieces to work with, so.
Right.
What can you do?
That I could do.
But in this circumstance, it is slightly distracting. This big white spot right there in the front.
Yep. I kind of absolutely.
And I would give a lot of leeway just because of the circumstances. But if I was like a judge and I was getting down to the nitty gritty, that might be something that I would worry about. Now, what I also like that you had these smaller pieces scattered around. That's the attention to detail that most people don't get until way further along.
Right.
And that was well done. I would double down on it. Just get even more pieces, more crumbles, and more of the gradation down further. But that's good job getting there.
All right.
This far. Yeah.
And I might take a little video of another one that probably did a better job with that. There's another one that I thought did a better job. So okay, so the other piece I didn't like is I've got this one rock here, that little small one.
This darker one?
Yeah.
Pointing that way?
Yeah. That's a problem, right? Like those would be pieces that, not great. So okay.
So what piece of wood here doesn't fit?
So this one here is pointing the different direction. The one that's coming out this way is a different direction. I wanted it to go that way. Sure. But it didn't fit in right in that little hole that I had. But I also wondered, is there like a contrast? Is there some good things about having a contrasting piece, or is it all just just keep going?
So here's what I have to say about all this. Okay, we've got all of these very straight curves.
Right.
So
I know what you mean.
But then you've got this guy right out front. It has all this movement to it.
Yeah.
Honestly, what I would have done is I probably would have broken it right here at the crook.
Okay.
And so then you would have just had that same form that you got echoed all the way here everywhere else.
Gotcha.
The only other thing was the guy in the far back, the shorter one.
Yes.
He's so straight. And he's just not behaving like everybody else.
Right.
Okay. Maybe even just rotating. It does have a curve a little bit to it. If it was maybe 180, it might work a little bit better. Most of the angle is just too steep.
Okay.
I would have upright a little bit more. More like the big guy here in the middle.
Yeah.
And then we only have so much time with these things. But any of these weird ends, you never want to look straight at an end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And then this guy also just because it's the different colors.
Right. So this one is one that I broke.
Yeah.
Because it was too long, and I think that's why the color is so different.
It is.
You know, it didn't quite fit, and it was like, I don't think I realized how different it was going to look until it was filled.
Until you got water in it, yeah.
That's a big difference. But yeah, it definitely sticks out there, that color.
Yeah.
Okay, would you mind talking a little bit, because I at least had a general idea of like rule of thirds and kind of shapes and things like that. And I talked a little bit about it in some of my videos. If you guys haven't seen them, you can check out some of my other kind of aquascaping. I'm no professional. I'm very much an amateur, but I've talked a little bit about that. Would you kind of mind just pointing that out to people so they can kind of see what are the things you see as far as those elements?
So I'll be honest, I don't see that anymore. It comes with practice.
Right.
And you'll get to a point where you don't process it in boxes anymore. You process it as a whole piece.
Yes.
And it just winds up being
right, absolutely.
the way it should be.
Yeah.
So I rarely look at that when I go and I look at a tank. But for you, the rule of thirds, right, is you divide into 3 parts. And there's a mathematical calculation, or you can just do the general thirds.
Yeah, the thirds is a lot easier.
Yeah, I don't want to math when I'm doing art.
Right.
So you do thirds, right, and then you do thirds this way. You know about both ways. Yeah. And then wherever lines cross is a potential focal point. You don't want them in all of the cross lines. That's just like, whoa, what am I looking at?
Right.
So, you know, pick one depending on what you want. And if you want to do like more negative space, less positive space, vice versa, and that's how you can kind of figure out where you want people to look. So where do you think your focal point?
So what I was trying to do was my focal point being right here, and then it would draw your eye this way. That was what I was going for in that.
Yep. And if this wasn't as bright, it would work better.
It'd be better.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, get it. Yeah, that's how I would diagnose this if I was breaking it down.
Okay.
Yeah. You know more than you think.
Well, I know a little bit.
What else?
Okay, so some of the finer details that Jen kind of talked to me at the end about making sure that my scape was clean and ready to go. I think that would be kind of good to talk about the lines. Yeah.
So if you're being judged, there are a lot of judges who are going to get their panties in the water about this front line of sand and it being very straight. Whatever, it doesn't have to be flat, but straight. So you've got you fixed a lot of it. It was much worse, but you've got all these kind of little divots, and that's what I put in there.
So there's part, but there are, but no, but it's good. So
I mean, if it was really bad,
it's fairly straight, but still. Some might still say, yep, not quite clean enough.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. What about the size? Does it matter when you get to the size as much? Not really.
No. I mean, something like this, it kind of does because you've got the viewing angle all the way around.
Right.
But for judging, it's typically just the front line.
Okay.
I did not specify that for the judges. Probably could have been kind of assumed.
Right.
And like with all photo content, it's always square on. And then you might get some detail shots, but that's the only one that is judged.
Yeah. So, a couple things I didn't love about this setup, and we talked a little about. I hate the fact there's no background on these.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. And so I want to show you guys on screen kind of the difference. Now we have like the worst lighting in this place for something like this, so the lighting's not great. But if you pull this up, you can kind of see that it really makes a lot of that pop a lot more. The colors are going to pop more. So if you're doing tanks at home, you're like, I can't get this aquascape right. Add a black background, you're going to be much happier with it. Or just any background, really. Something's going to hide this equipment, so you're not going to see that back there. That's going to clean up some of the looks. That's just one easy way to make your aquarium look nicer.
If you have the option when you're setting up your tank, am I still in frame?
Yeah, you should be.
When you're setting up your tank on your stand, space it out from the wall. Aside from the filtration, space it out from the wall, because if your wall is right at the back of your tank, it's also a dead stop. But if you have that little bit of space and you get kind of the light play, that helps give you the depth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, there is one other thing I tried to do in this tank that I'm curious if it comes out.
All right.
So one of the things that you're looking at in your aquascapes, you're trying to add depth to your scapes. There are some that I think probably did a better job of it, and there's different ways to do it. So one of the things that I was trying to do, you tell me if that makes sense or if it failed. I have big leaves out here in the front, and I have smaller leaves in the back. Did that give me a little bit more depth, do you think, when you're looking at it?
I mean,
or does it not stick out because they're kind of hidden too much in the smaller leaves?
There's a couple factors at play. I think because there's only so much space that you had to work with
Right.
and choices. I think that if the bigger leaves were even further forward, because you're really only starting halfway through the tank already.
Yeah.
So you're really only giving yourself a very small window to work with. But your theory is sound.
Okay.
Your theory is absolutely sound. And bigger objects to the front also.
Yeah, yeah.
So like when you look outside, I think we talked about this yesterday. When you look outside, things closer or bigger,
Or
the
bigger.
leaves on the trees you can kind of see. But
Yeah.
if you're looking at the ones on the horizon, it's just fine.
Yeah, which and maybe even if I switch some of the sticks and put some of those smaller ones more towards the back and the bigger ones the front, and that's yep. All right, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I think that's awesome. Hopefully it was good for you guys. You learned something. Hopefully all the audio comes in okay. This is not a good place to videotape. We don't have good light. We don't have good sound.
We got this guy.
People working in the background. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to take a couple other videos of some of the other scapes and talk a little bit about some of the things that we mentioned here that maybe were done a little bit better. So thank you guys for watching, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.